Hello, this is Jeremy Plymell, and this is my AEP 855 introduction. So for basic information, just it's pretty standard what we've done in every class. I live in Clay Center, Kansas. I'm currently a stay-at-home dad. My wife teaches elementary music in Washington, Kansas, and I have a 4-year-old son who's currently in pre-K. My past includes I went to Wichita State, and I got my middle school math and history degree for education. And then after that, I joined the Navy, and I was in the Navy for 6 years. I was a nuclear trained electrician, and I was on the USS Ronald Reagan. And then for the future, I would like to start teaching middle school, preferably history, and that I should start teaching in next year. So any extra information, so some of my hobbies include fishing, playing with my son. I like video games, listening to audiobooks, and podcasts. Just included for a preferred learning method, I like to do things hands-on, which is very difficult in online classes, but I think that's important to understand, teaching to understand how each person learns differently, and some people might be better off hands-on or listening or reading. It's just important to understand. Exceptions for an assignment. I added this on here since I'm currently not teaching. Some items, if the assignment requires, then I might have to either make up some information or use information from the past or talk to others about their experiences. But when I do this, I'm very transparent about it. I don't try and hide the fact that I'm not teaching. So just something to be aware if you're watching anything that I do or critiquing anything, I'm not currently teaching. All right, so now for the text that we read from Chapter 1, Political Influence, and I put the prompt up at the top. Why do politics influence schools but not necessarily move school leaders to take action based on politics? So from this, looking at this, I looked at this historical context where in the beginning of the modern form of education that we see, there were some aspects that were mandatory political affiliation, so teachers were required to join certain political parties and vote for certain people. And then you see a shift in the 1920s, I believe, is what the text was calling out, where people were avoiding politics altogether in education. And this type of shift, I like to talk about it, is the pendulum swing, which I'll mention that later on. And then you have another thing at play here where you have pulling forces. So you have federal versus state versus local. So all different types of government are kind of pulling school leaders in different directions sometimes, and they all have different threats involved. So you have funding, litigation, testing requirements, and then you have the 10th Amendment, which basically says the states can educate their citizens how they see fit. So all of these competing forces can sometimes lead school leaders to basically wait it out or do nothing at all. All right, standards. This one. So why did standards focus on outcomes seemingly split the work and skills of a profession from the knowledge and wisdom of that profession? This one I had very difficult time answering. I didn't fully understand the prompt, and I couldn't find in the reading from that chapter really anything that discusses that prompt, but I took a guess at some of the aspects here. So if someone cares really highly about an outcome, but they don't really care how it's achieved, then I could see how you would value separating work and skills from the knowledge and wisdom. So you don't really care about how it gets done, you just want it to get done. And what you see there is then you have a short-term gain. You meet your outcome, but your long-term stability is sacrificed. So the students may be better off. They would get more value from the knowledge and wisdom that teachers can impart or help them understand, rather than the work and the skills and the immediate gain. So why the standards evolved to explicitly call for school leaders' direct action. This was also from the reading. They found that a bunch of different research has tied student success to leaders taking direct action, which makes sense. So political activists, why school leaders must become activists on behalf of their students and family. This is almost a direct continuation of the previous prompt. So you have these standards that we have put forward here. So standard 6, understanding and responding to multiple contexts. So you're talking political context and cultural. social economical context. And then the reason behind these implementation, it's the same thing as before. Basically, they found that it's going to put make it more successful to students, and then also the education leaders are in the position to affect that change, whereas sometimes parents aren't able to make the change they want. They don't have the political standing, whereas education leaders in some aspect do have that. So educational policies, why do politics surrounding education policies provide the strong connection between school leaders feel and do and their strategic and their abilities to strategically think and how to handle it all? All right, well, this one's complex because politics are everywhere and they involve pretty much everything. And then you have the aspect of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, which is what we always said in the Navy. So if you make a big stink about something, it may only affect a small number of people, but it's going to get a lot more attention than the people that it actually affects. And then you balance that with everybody's competing needs and interests. So education leaders just don't have enough time to fix every problem, and they have to prioritize. So that's kind of aspect of that. All right, so these are my professional and my personal thoughts. So politics in general are becoming more polarized, which we are definitely seeing, and then educational policies are definitely not above political influence, and education leaders need to be aware of different biases. And then we need to examine the decisions and how they affect all of our students, parents, staff, and community. And then this is where I'm going to talk about that pendulum swing. So sometimes you'll see an action and it will cause a response to swing really far one direction, and then that direction will sit there for a little bit, and then enough people will gain enough opinion or they'll gain leadership and they'll shift it really far the other direction. And then it shifts way too far one direction. So we just have to be aware of when we're doing things to try not to overcorrect a problem. And when we overcorrect a problem, then one day you may be on the high swing, but the next day you're going to be on the low swing. So it's just try and counterbalance what's happening. All right. So what do I propose? Um, Basically, to help my knowledge, I'm going to try and research problems. Not every problem is unique. There's things that have happened before, and you can draw on past experiences to affect your future decisions. And then use your mentors and different colleagues, and also just be active and don't avoid the political aspects of education. Thank you very much. I look forward to working with everybody in class.